What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another co-host tonight. We got Chris Morrison in the house. If you've seen him on Instagram, you know he's probably one of the most creative run influencers, at least in my opinion. And definitely won't have to edit any audio because he has that smooth, sultry podcast voice, which is just perfect for tonight. Chris, what's up, man? Thanks for sitting down with me tonight.
What's up, man? I appreciate all the compliments, the creativity, the voice.
Oh man, I mean we can let I want to start. We'll start with the creativity because there's a bunch of things that I do want to say. You really are one of the most creative running influencers. At least I've been on Instagram now about a year and a half, and I've seen people leave in your comments before, and I always want to ask, like, how the heck do you come up with ideas? I mean, you are outstanding at stitching audio and just coming everything seems good, where I know people like will lean on I need to make educational content, or I want to be really funny, or I don't even know what my approach is, but it your reels are great. They're like, what made you be like, I'm gonna make creative funny reels about running on Instagram?
Yeah, man, it's been like a whole journey to that. Like I started posting on Instagram like 2.5 years ago. Like started to post some running stuff, and like if you look back at those reels, like they were terrible. I mean, they were not very creative. It was a lot of me running with some other voiceover on top of it, and like that was the extent of it. But I think it's like anything, like any muscle that you work all the time, like it just becomes more second nature, or these thoughts or these ideas start coming to you more and more frequently. Like I did a couple funny reels that really took off, and then I kind of just leaned into that. Like, okay, these are what's doing well, so I started doing more of those, and I will I'll keep a list on my phone. It's just called content ideas. And like throughout the day, as something comes to me or something occurs to me, and it's usually based off something that's happening in the moment in real life that I think might be a funny idea, I'll just write it down. I'll literally write like stepping on my kid's toy, or
What
whatever.
did you just did one where it was like how I trained for technical trails, and you threw out all your kids' toys in the hallway?
It,
That was
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, yeah. And literally came to me from stepping on his toy, and then boom, just triggered this thought of like, this house is technical. And then the idea just builds from there. And usually, as I'm putting it together, I'll think of other little details or things to work in as well to add to it. But it's honestly just been something that, since I post a reel pretty much every single day for the last couple of years at least, it's like I said, it's like anything else. You work it out, and you get stronger at it, you get better at it. Because my
For the
first
stuff
reels were terrible.
for the stuff that you like stitch, or like your, because you also find great audio, is that just in your algorithm, or like do you know what to search for? Because I wish all the time that like my algorithm would push me things that would be funny. And Glaze does this really well too, where he'll stitch some just funny, ridiculous things. Does that just come up, or are you searching for that stuff?
It's got no. I'm not searching for it. It's got to be my algorithm at this point. My
Nice.
algorithm is pretty much just like comedic stuff and like running content. So inevitably, I'll come across something, and I'll just save it as soon as I see it. And I know, even if I don't know exactly what the idea is going to be, I know there's something there. I'll
Yeah.
save it, and then when I'm ready to make a reel that day, sometimes I'll just go through my saved posts and check out all those different ones that I saved to see which one I want to stitch off of, or if I got an idea to stitch off of it.
You mentioned posting every day, and that's something that I mean, I want to grow my channel, and for one reason or another, but I've said to myself so many times, I know the key is
Yeah.
consistency and content. And I'll get like 4 or 5 days in of posting a reel every day, and then one day off will turn to three. And I guess maybe it's like imposter syndrome, or like maybe coming from the YouTube space where everything is so polished. I, I overthink things all the time. Like my buddy JJ Buckner, I'm sure you've bumped into him
Oh yeah.
through Instagram or whatever, but he's always like, Brad, just stop overthinking it. Just, it's supposed to be raw. It's supposed to be, off the cuff and things like that. And here I am, like, from the editing, and it needs audio and all this perfect things, and it doesn't need to be that. And I'm trying to post more often, but I feel like then I'm like, I'm gonna post something today, and then I have like what I think is this grand idea, and then I'll scroll and see something that you post and be like, ah, that's shit compared to.
Well, don't do. Yeah, two things. One, listen to JJ. Just like make it and post it. Like obviously you don't want to post like total just garbage, but like yeah, it doesn't need to be polished. My stuff, I don't think my stuff is polished. I can look
Nah,
back at it and see that I should have maybe clipped it a little better to take out less pauses, or the lighting's not great, but like I think people enjoy seeing that because it looks more, maybe more relatable or more realistic, as opposed to something that looks like it was shot in a studio or on a professional camera or something like that. All my stuff is just done on my iPhone. um but also, yeah, the comparison thing, like if you like it and you're happy with it and you're happy putting it out into the world, then just do that.
yeah,
And but the consistency part is tough, man, because I feel that pressure to post something every single day, and I sure as shit do not. Oh, is it okay if I swear on here a little
yeah,
bit?
you can swear. You're good to go, man. You're
Okay.
good to go.
I there's definitely days where don't
Yeah,
have any great ideas, and I feel pressure to put something out, and I'm like, is it better to just not post today? Is one day off really gonna kill everything? Which it's not,
right,
as opposed to putting out something that might just be like subpar. But
right.
um, but that's another little tip. What I think people should do is, if you have something that has done well, and maybe it's been 3 months, maybe it's been 6 months since you posted it, and it did well at the time.
Hmm.
Even then, only maybe 25% of your followers saw it the original time, and you probably have newer followers since that was posted, so like repost that stuff,
Right.
or rework that idea. i've done that I've done
I've
that a
tried
bunch
that
of
a few.
times.
I've tried that a few times, and it has worked. And like, or even just the change of seasons, or actually some of the things that I've remade, I've actually like maybe changed my opinion even slightly. Like the content that I mostly post is my training philosophies and my journey through. And there's been times where I've had an opinion about something, and then like 6 months later, after training and learning a little bit more, I'm like, wow, I feel a little bit differently
Mm,
about that current situation. There's there's so many things. I feel like I've gone through an evolution of following you on Instagram, and obviously the comedic humor was the thing that led me to you in the first place. And then I think what like kept me coming back was a number of different things that I definitely want to talk about, because I'm sure that I'm not alone here. Well, number one, maybe not everybody, maybe it's just me, but I you're from Arizona, and
yes.
I went to school at ASU, and I lived in Arizona for a couple of years. I taught high school on 76th and Indian School Road in the Maryville area, and I lived up I lived up in Peoria. I lived on 81st and Bell for a bunch of years, and I saw videos of you running on the canal, and I'm like, man, that's, I used to run on that canal. I've done the Ironman in Arizona. So it was kind of like a little nostalgic in a way to see your content running there. But then I immediately thought to myself, I hate running in the heat. I could not wait to get out. And it wasn't so much the heat, because I mean, obviously, when you live in Arizona for a couple years or however long you have, you get used to the heat. It's not that big of a deal after a while. It's still hot, but it's like expected. The thing that I always tell people, and I even tell my students today, it wasn't how hot it got; it was how long it was hot for. Like there were so many times in October when it would hit 100, I'd be like, "Come on, it's October! Like, can we just break it? Can we just break this heat?" And I mean, I know now you guys are you're in the hundreds already, right?
Yeah, we started hitting 100 a few days ago, last week.
And then I remembered, like in the winter, what is quote nice weather for me, like 60, 70, started feeling really, really cold. So there was like the change in seasons were so short in Arizona that you couldn't even appreciate the quote like winter or warm, cooler weather, if you will. So it's like, how, how do you manage the weather? Is it just something that you just have to deal with and you understand, or does it suck?
There's times when it sucks. So I've been here 8 years, but I grew up and lived my first 31 years of life in Alaska.
Oh, jeez.
So I had a huge culture shock, coming down here. And we moved in May. I'll say it was like mid to the end of May when we moved down here. So it was already hitting 100 degrees when we moved. And I was just like, oh, I made a horrible decision. But I think the summer is fun at first, honestly. Like right now, where we're starting to hit 100, but it's still comfortable in the mornings. It's still might be high 60s, 70 in the mornings, and that's usually when I go run.
Okay.
So that's not really a factor yet. And then like when it starts hitting this temperature, this is when people will start like going in the pool, um, and things like that. Whatever, barbecuing, going in the pool. So it's fun at first, but I mean, mid end of July for me until it's over, which, like you said, could be October. It was October last year. We had a gnarly summer last year. We set like heat records, and in Phoenix, that's saying something. We had all of July was, I think every day in July was at least 110, got up to at least 110, if not higher. And I mean, a lot of those were probably closer to 120. We were going running at like 4:30 in the morning, and it was still like 94 degrees, 95 degrees. And it seemed like it didn't cool down to like mid-October. So it was a long summer, it's tough. I,
Do
I
you
don't know if
get
I'm
to
used. I
use
don't know if
do
I'm
you get
used
to
to it.
use do you get to use any of that heat acclimation? Like, do you seek out hot races? I mean, I know you've raced locally, but like, would you think about that if you were going to race? Like, do you want to race somewhere in like the dead of summer?
Oh, hell no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't know that it. I think maybe I see a benefit when it does start to cool down. That like I'm going much quicker at a much easier effort without the heat. So I do notice that change when we hit like our fall or winter time, but I haven't like specifically used the heat training in preparation for a race that would require that. It's just been I keep signing up for these races in October, so I have to train train through the summer. It's just something I have to deal with.
Right on. I what brought you from Alaska though? Was it work?
No, so my wife's parents had moved here. I'll back up. So I grew up in Alaska. I met my wife in Alaska, but she's from Salt Lake City, and she was only ever intending on being up in Alaska for like a couple of years. But we met, and I think she ended up being up there like 4 or 5 years. But then once we got engaged, it was like, okay, where are we gonna like settle down? Because she didn't want to stay in Alaska. I was ready for something different. Her parents had moved from Salt Lake City to Phoenix while she was living in Alaska, and she's really close with her parents. So they were like, "Hey, if you guys just want to like come down here, you can stay with us till you get jobs, till you get a place to stay." And so we like put in notice at work, put the condo up for rent, and we were down here like a month and a half after making that decision. But so really, it was to be closer to her family.
Are you staying? Are you Arizona lifers or what?
I would like to stay. I love it here. I honestly don't know if she's as sold on Arizona as I am,
All right. Yeah,
but
and I mean,
I love it here.
I liked it, but I mean, I guess for me there was like no place like home. I needed the seasons. I think I'm an ocean guy, so I definitely like I needed a piece of the ocean, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
The other thing I really like or was like looking for when I think about relatability is being a dad. I'm a father, and I think in not only in the ultra space, but in anything that we're doing, I feel like a lot of this social media is a little bit of a young man's game, or sometimes you look around and you're like, man, I don't know how I would do this if I didn't have kids, meaning like things would be a lot different. Like, and you're very active with your kids, stroller miles all the time, love that. Is Do you see anything like, do you remember life without kids? Because I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, what would like how easy would it be to just come home from work and go for a run, or spontaneously head out for a camping trip for a couple of days? And they're like, right? Do you remember that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, my kids are pretty young. Like, my oldest is not quite 3. My youngest is 5 months. So I'm still really new to the fatherhood game, but there's definitely less flexibility. Um, I was I was always like going out and training and doing stuff early in the morning just before work anyway. But yeah, if I decided I wanted to sleep in one day, then no big deal. I'll just go in the evening when I get home, like you said. But that option is not not always on the table anymore, or they have to come along in the stroller. And and the weekends are tough. Like I still go super early even on the weekends because there's depending on where I am in training. I mean, there might be times where I'm going out for 4 or 5 hours on a run, and it's I always have a little bit of that dad guilt about like cutting into the family time on the, especially on the weekends. So I still just go super early, so that way hopefully I'm getting home still by like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. and not cutting into the Saturday too much. But as much as there's less flexibility, I think it's made me have to be more disciplined with like going when I say I'm going to go and not being able to like push it off because I usually have my window for that day when I can go and I have to make it happen.
It definitely holds me more accountable. I agree with you 100%. Like there's times where I'm more of like a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy, and yeah, you can't do that, especially just mine are 6 and 4, and so like you're like 3 years behind me, but yeah, then it turns into soccer, lacrosse, and all these practices, and swimming lessons, and it's nuts. And I think there was like Sally McRae was the one that was talking about being a parent and running ultras, and just it's hard to have like a really structured plan. So you have to just be able to, find time when you can, or break up a long run, or do these things. And I, I, I think that the parents of the world need a little bit more credit when it comes to ultra. And I have friends without parents that say to me all the time, like, I do not know how you can work the 9 to 5 and do this and do that. And I guess it's like the whole mantra of parenting. There's really no right, wrong, indifferent. You just somehow you just freaking figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. Somehow you just make it work. And it's honestly too is like I mean, and maybe it's just the distances that I've done thus far, which has been up to like the 50-mile distance, but for the majority of my training block, like it doesn't take as much time as maybe it would seem, or that I think some. I know everybody's different. People take longer to run different distances, but I mean, a lot of my training block up until I'm in like the peak weeks, it could be just like 7, 8, 9 hours a week, which you divide that up over 7 days, it's an hour a day or a little over an hour a day. It's really not as time consuming as it may seem. But there are, I mean, obviously peak weeks, it gets becomes more to juggle, but
It definitely does. Yeah.
I'm also a big believer in the in like there's seasons. So like if I'm training for a race and say I'm in the peak weeks and I'm okay this month, I'm going to be running a lot more, and that just like is what it is. That's just where the focus might be more for that month. But I'm going to have recovery weeks and taper weeks, and I'm going to have the majority of my time where I'm not running that much, and I'm going to be focused more on the family stuff. So I don't get as hung up. I try not to get as hung up on like balance on the day to day basis. I look at more of the overall, the macro, and if I'm kind of balancing like the year properly, as opposed to like trying to do a little bit of everything every day. There's times where I'm more focused on other aspects.
You mentioned that your consistency with posting and things like that. If I can ask, if it's not too much, like you took a pretty nice break in February, at least for me. Like, I mean, I sent out the search parties, and I was everybody that I knew that followed you. I'm like, have you heard from Chris? Have you heard from Chris? And a lot of people are like, yeah, he's probably just taking some time off. And is that something that you plan, or did you just need a personal break, or like what was with that? I guess you took maybe like even a month and change off.
Yeah, I think it was probably close to 2 months. Um, it was not planned. Um, I don't know. In retrospect, maybe it was needed, but I mean, to be honest, I had I mean, I'll just be honest about it. Like, if anybody's followed me for a while, and I don't like bang on it too much, but like, I post that like I got into running when I completed like treatment for alcoholism years ago, and that's like what got me started in running, and that I'm sober. That's something I touch on here and there throughout my posting, but it's never like a big focal point. But like mid and January, like I had a slip and I had a relapse. And when I'm when I am drinking, like there's no running, there's no training, so therefore there's no posting of anything on social media. And I just had, I mean, obviously personal stuff going on, and that stuff just fell by the wayside and just wasn't the priority for a couple of months.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And I sympathize with that too, as somebody also in recovery. And you know, I haven't had a slip up yet, and
Yeah.
I did in the past. I mean, I've tried to go sober so many times. I'm 42 years old. I've tried to go sober so many times, man. And this has been the longest stretch that I've ever gone. And I sympathize with that struggle, and I totally understand where you're coming from, because the same would happen to me. You know, that's the ripple effects of drinking went both ways for me. And I give you a lot of credit. I'm sorry I brought that out. I apologize for that. And but
Oh no, it's fine.
I'm glad you're allowed. I'm glad you're able to speak it, because the more we do talk about things like that, we realize that there's other people that are going through that same exact issue, as I'm sure you know. And
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
is that kind of what led to not going to Black Canyons and stuff? Was that a really big ripple effect of all of that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't go to Black Canyon. It happened like, I don't know how exactly. It was 3 4 weeks prior to Black Canyon, and then I was also going to run Crown King Scramble, which is a 50K here. That was like my first ultra, and my plan was to do it every year. I'd done it like the last 3 years, so I missed both of those races. Um, but yeah, I mean, don't be sorry for bringing it up. It's not anything I've spoken about like publicly yet, because I think part of it was like it was just fresh. Um, and I wasn't sure. It's interesting having like, not that it's that big, but a larger following, and having your stuff, as far as social media, be like so public. I'm I'm oftentimes like kind of debating in my mind what I want to put out publicly and what I don't. But I just kind of felt like I showed this whole build up to Black Canyon. That was kind of like the current storyline, and I have mentioned on my social media about sobriety often enough that I think a lot of people who have followed me for a while probably put two and two together. But I also felt like it was kind of disingenuous to like show this whole training block build up and then not follow through and then disappear for 2 months and then come back like, hey, I'm back. And I can totally do that because I don't really owe anybody, I don't think, an explanation outside of like my family and close friends and stuff like that. But and like I wouldn't get into like the nitty gritty details of it all, but I think to be somewhat transparent of that would with that is the type of authenticity and like vulnerability that I do want to put out there as well, because like you said, I think people can connect with that. When other people share their stories like that, I know I benefit from it. So it's fine. It's been like far enough in the past now that I feel comfortable talking about it. In fact, I think today is 60 days back off the devil's juice. So moving in the right direction.
Thank you. And I thank you so much for sharing, because like I said, man, I totally understand. There's been tougher days and easier days for me, and one day at a time. So if today's 60 for you, then let's get through today, and then we'll work on tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things, or I mentioned before, that there were a lot of things that continue to have me coming back to your content. And the fact of the matter is too, you can be an influencer with a large following and still be a normal human being. And I mean,
Hmm.
that's all that was, like, right. You're a normal human being.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I decided that I'd probably just say something about it publicly, because I'm not I feel like at least that's what I try to like convey and show. I'm not trying to show the super polished version. I'm not trying to be like, "Oh, I got sober in 2012 and I've been sober ever since and now I'm an ultra runner." Like, I'm still a guy who's going through his day-to-day life and figuring things out and screwing things up and doing some things well, and it's just part of showing that, I think, authentic journey, and not trying to, yeah, come across like I'm some dude who has it all figured out and has all the answers and all the secrets. I am not that.
I know that you're advocating for yourself now, but I've also seen you advocate for other people. And you actually made like a pretty good reel about it the other day, because I do like people that can be from that comedic side, but then also like get people's attention. Like I could tell the tone in your voice where you were like, listen, I have something to say here, and
Yeah.
I want you to listen. And I think that's a really powerful piece of your message as well. I mean, it's easy to advocate for other people, but I mean, to come out and say things and vocalize, not so much, or even maybe I can use the word cruelty, but just not being kind and staying positive, or judging people because of the way they look or their size. And you'd mentioned, like, I'm a pretty big dude,
Hmm.
like I do not have ultra runner physique. Does that mean I'm not an ultra runner? And I, if you can just talk for a minute about like how much that means to you, and just how we all just need to be a little bit, you know, on the same team per se. I don't know if that's the right word, but I've been fortunate enough where I haven't seen too much of it. And I mean,
Hmm.
you have a bigger presence, so I'm sure you get more hate. I'm sure you get more BS, and I'll get that one day. I got that on the YouTube side, but that's a really big part of your message too. Like, where does that like? When is it? Hey, I'm not being funny today. Like, you need to sit down and listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, I'm it makes me happy that you like notice that and pick up on that because and I'll answer the question, but like strategically, social media wise, like I am trying to be more diverse and not just be like funny all the time and not just be like a joke page or something. I do want to share these other aspects and these other thoughts and like show my training or whatever. I don't want it to all just be silliness. And so I am wanting to do more posts like that. But man, that came about from not so much the like online comments cuz to be honest, like if your stuff gets seen enough by enough people, you're going to get some shithead who's going to sit there and type something nasty to you because there's no repercussions to that person. And I always assume somebody that's going to take the time out of their day to write a nasty comment to a stranger on the internet probably isn't like doing too well and probably isn't an opinion that I really need to put very much stock in. So I can let that stuff roll off my back really easily. What kind of prompted that reel was comments that I'll get in person, and they're never like outright rude, but they're comments like, "Oh man, you're doing pretty good for a big guy. Oh, you're moving pretty well for a big boy." And it's like to me, I hear like, "Oh, you're doing pretty good for a fat ass." It's like kind of this passive little. Maybe it's not even meant to be a dig, but it feels like a passive dig, or it just
Yeah,
feels like an unnecessary comment. Like you could
man,
just
I
say,
thought you'd be so much slower.
"Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,"
that's
or I'll
that's what
speak.
they're
Oh
saying. Yeah, like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Or I'll meet people and they'll be like, "Oh, you're bigger in person than I thought," and it's like you can just tell somebody that they're doing a good job or they're crushing it without having to add this comment on about their body type or appearance or whatever. So
yeah.
that part was kind of from like personal experience, but and then as far as feeling like I needed to like speak up about it or somehow be an advocate for it is interesting because I never like I posted for probably 2 years and never mentioned my size. I never said, "Hey, look at me. I'm 6'5" and I run. Hey, look at me. I'm like whatever I weigh at the time, 270 pounds, and I run ultras." Like I never was making that a focal point. I was never branding myself as a big guy runner. But I would, as the account grew more and more, I'd get comments and messages from people saying like, "Dude, I love seeing somebody who looks like me out there doing it." Oh man, I thought this was only for people who were like super lean and shredded. Like people were seeing my stuff and realizing that this was something they could probably also do, which I love.
Hmm.
And so I would so I guess that is for me the advocating part isn't even as much for me because I can take that stuff well. I can take it with a grain of salt, but like advocating for maybe other people who would be discouraged by that because or would deter them from wanting to do this because they think they're not the right body type or they don't look a certain way. And like you said, like we're all on the same team. That's the way I look at it. If you want
We
to
are,
do
yeah.
this, then go do it, and I'll cheerlead for you. So I would never want someone to feel discouraged because maybe they feel like they're not in good enough shape, or they're not built like a runner, or whatever it is. I want anybody that wants to pursue this, like I want them to pursue it.
Who was the woman earlier this year that was racing and you had posted about her? If you, her name is slipping my tongue right now, but she was racing and she was dealing with a lot of the same like judgment and things online, and you advocate and you ran with her, I think, or you paced her.
Yeah,
Do you, who was it?
yeah, oh yeah. Her name's Michelle.
Okay.
She lives here, and and I think, and she definitely does deal with those same types of comments and stuff online. But
Hmm.
like, she's the sweetest person.
Yeah.
She loves doing this. She loves running. She loves ultras. She's done at least a couple. I could be wrong. At least not. At least maybe at least two, maybe more ultras. And so she was doing a 50K, and she was stressing about meeting the cutoff times. And so one of our mutual friends who had a bunch of race credits from volunteering messaged me and said, "Hey, if I give you my race credits, so because you can't have pacers in like 50K races typically,
Hmm.
um, and if I donate my credits to you and you sign up for this race, would you just run it with Michelle, like as an unofficial pacer, just to keep her on track or to keep her company, whatever moral support, whatever she needs?" So I was like,
Awesome.
"Yeah, no brainer." So yeah, that was a couple weeks before the race. So I just entered, and I just stuck with her all day. And because when I see somebody, I don't care who they are, but I see them, they have the passion for it and they want to go out there and do it, and there's some way I can support them in doing it, then I'll do it
Yeah.
because I know how much I love it and I know how much I get out of it, and I want other people to have that same experience if it's something they want to do.
Isn't it the, I had this similar situation with JJ doing his first marathon, and you know, he would have finished and it would have been fine. But I remember when I told him, because he was like, dude, I don't know if marathon's really for me. And I said, if you commit to it and you train, I will fly to wherever it is and I will do it with you, and I will make sure that you get in whatever your goal is. And man, it was such an awesome day. That must have been and great for her and great for you. Just yeah, because everything I saw with you posting with her, she was always smiling and having, and that's
Oh yeah,
really, those are like the little things outside of Instagram, or like the beauty of local communities and all of your run groups and things that really do, they make it really really well. And I mean, in Arizona too, what is it like living in like the mecca of Aravaipa, like
I
Aravaipa
know,
land? Is
I
it
know,
is
I
it
love
too
it.
is it too much? Like, do they have too much stock going on out there, or I've heard they've done a really really good job, and I'm coming out and doing Javelina in October.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, and it looks like a good time. It looks like they do a pretty good job when they run races.
Oh yeah. I'll see you at Javelina. I'm gonna be out there pacing.
Nice.
Another lady, but yeah, I didn't know. Like when I moved here, I wasn't into trail running. I was road running, and
Uh-huh.
so by dumb luck, I kind of landed right in a hotbed for trail running. But I definitely think Aravaipa has the probably the monopoly here. But like you said, I mean, they do a fantastic job, and like all the race directors, the volunteers. I mean, it's just everyone is very like open and welcoming and supportive, and it's always just a great vibe, and it's a party out there. Like it's definitely not too much. I love it. Yeah.
Well, I'm coming by myself, and I actually have a buddy that's in Mesa that I did the Grand Canyon with a couple weeks ago, and I told him, I was like, I got one of the tents with two cots, so we're gonna have an open cot policy over there in Javelina. I really, I'm gonna try and run home. I'm gonna risk blowing up. I really 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 want to break 24 hours there, and
And you're running the 100 mile.
yeah, I'm running the 100, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm going for it. I'm going full send. Coming out of summer here, it'll be hot and humid all summer here. And I said I raced Ironman out there in April, and I raced also when they moved Ironman to November. So I've got those 2 seasons, and I've trained through this. I don't think the heat is going to be that big of an issue. Maybe being exposed, but I'm learning how to like When I did Ironmans and stuff, I wore long sleeve like heat gear and cool gear and things like that. So yeah, I really want to take it easy during the day and then be able to run hard at night. I loved canyons, but it was like I was definitely a little more conservative than I maybe should have been because I really wanted to get that first one under. But
Yeah.
when I heard that there's a different belt for the sub 24 hour, a different buckle, I'm like, I kind of want to go for that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And speaking, I mean, you didn't make it to Black Canyons, and that's fine. But you bounce right back. You just race yesterday, 2 days ago.
I just raced Saturday night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, the insomnia, right? And they do a
yeah,
bunch of distances.
yeah, they do a night series here. It's called the Insomniac Night Series, and they do night races every month
Oh,
throughout the
every
summer
month.
because it's so hot. I think I want to say there's 6 of them, and this was the second one.
Okay.
So yeah, because it's so hot in the day, you can't put on races. So
Right.
we go
Was
out
it
there
a
and
is
start
it
at
a
like
loop?
7 p.m.
What's the course like?
This one was loops, which are not my favorite. this was
Okay.
uh, this was it was 2 big loops and 2 small loops. I think it was like a 9.5 mile loop, and then you did like a 5 mile loop, and then you went back out and repeated those loops. Um, Man, I struggle mentally with the loops. Like after I've run it the first time, all I'm thinking about is I know exactly what I have to run again, and that like I don't know why that just messes with me.
People are saying that's going to be the hardest thing about javelina, and everyone's like, oh, the loops, the loops. I got to be honest, I don't. That's not something at least that's entered my mental. I love backyard ultra styles. I don't know if you ever done one of those. They're dope,
Not yet.
where you do 4 miles every hour on the hour until the last
Yeah,
man standing. And I've done some other like smaller loop. I think what it is I don't have a lot of public land here where I live. So when I go to like the county park, if I want to do like the longest loop that I can do is maybe 10Ks here in a big park. So even when I'm, getting out for a long run, I'm doing loops regardless. Or the run I did the other day was 1.5 mile loops and I ran that like 12 times. So I don't think that I don't know if javelina is going to be an issue with the loops. I got to find out, but I
yeah.
I know a lot of people say the same thing. And Javelina does washing machine, I think. So you go like clockwise and counterclockwise. Maybe that will change things. I don't know.
I don't think they're doing that anymore. Actually, I
No,
think it's
all
all the
right,
same. I don't think so. I think they stopped doing that. I think they stopped doing it during COVID as one of the
okay.
protocols. I don't
And
know.
it
Maybe
never came back.
you're not breathing in someone else's face on the approach. But yeah, and I don't think it ever came back. I could be wrong,
I'll have to look into
but
that.
that's been my reason. The loops, because I was eyeballing 100 mile for October, and I signed up for one, but it's not Javelina because of the loops. But there's a lady here that I run with every week that has a run group, and she's a running coach, and she's done Javelina, and she's super familiar with the course, and she was telling me that like it's 20-mile loops, so it's not like it's some 2 mile loop that you're doing, and you're running it at different times of day. So her take was that it doesn't really feel like you're running the exact same loop every single time.
All right.
But that was definitely my deterrent from. I'm sure I'll do Javelina because it's such an iconic 100 miler here, but
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do it for my first one.
The uh the 50K you mentioned that you got your butt kicked.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm just yeah. So I took
What is
like
it? What's a butt kicking like? Yeah, I mean, were you a little like because like I said, you mentioned you still have essentially a newborn. I mean,
yeah,
maybe not one more month and we won't call him a newborn anymore. But
yeah.
like, there's that. There's the struggles that you were battling with, and like it's just starting to get hot, so there is a little bit of acclimation. It was just a tough day, or like you kind of in the beginning of the reel, you kind of said like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get my ass kicked here, and then sure enough,
Yeah,
got my ass
yeah,
kicked.
yeah. I knew it would not be my best performance. So like you said, I had 2 months off and from essentially February and March, we'll say, and they were not a healthy 2 months off when I'm just sitting on my ass and drinking beer and getting fatter. Like when I sobered up and decided to like get back on track and start running again, like I was 310 pounds. I was as big as I've ever been. I'm like 280 now.
Okay.
Um, so I dropped some weight, but I mean, I went from mid January feeling like not very concerned about being able to run 100K to like that first 5 mile run back was my heart rate was jacked. I felt like I'd ran an ultra afterwards. I mean, my fitness was just, I felt like I was starting at square one. And
Right.
so I had this 2 week build up, or sorry, not 2 week, 2 month build up essentially to this 50K, but it wasn't enough time for me to like get back into the shape that I'd been in prior or that I had run prior 50Ks at. It just wasn't. That first month was really just me struggling through runs and trying to drop some weight. So I knew I wasn't I knew I wasn't just my running fitness just wasn't there. So I expected that. But yeah, we started at 7 p.m. So it's 95 degrees out still. And of course, even though I know better, I go out way too fast on the first 10 miles
Full send.
and I'm slugging down tailwind and trying to take gels. And so from like mile 8 to mile 14, my stomach was just wrecked from trying to take in this food and the heat, which is not something that I normally struggle with. That was like
Okay.
a whole new struggle I'd never had. I've never really had stomach issues during an ultra. So I had that. And even by the time I got that under control, I was about mile 14, and I was probably most of the way done with that second loop. But then I start thinking like, first of all, I'm going way slower than I even expected.
Okay.
And I'm like, I got to go back out on that 10, whatever it was, 9.5, 10 mile loop again. Like, I'm not looking forward to that. Just mentally low. And I've never even considered dropping from a race before. Like, it's never crossed my mind. I've never been tempted. And I called my wife and was like, I'm going to drop out because when I get back to the halfway point, which is the start finish, I don't even, I don't care about doing this. Like, this isn't fun. I feel like shit. Um, I don't want to go back on a loop. I'd rather just be at home sleeping, like I mean, just bitching and whining. And she's trying to encourage me to just stick it out. But I just, it was the most I'd struggled in a race probably in like 3 years, and so, and I had a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself to get a finish because I hadn't shown up to my last two races, and I felt like I needed like a win, like I needed to like just get another one under my belt, and and I think there was probably putting I probably hopped into this race probably sooner than I should have, but was putting pressure on myself to go out and finish it in what I thought was a respectable time. And just mentally, I mean, it was just the heat, the stomach, the loops. I was just all over the place, but I got myself back to start finish, and like, thankfully, my buddy was there who was also doing the race. And he was like, I told him where I was at, and he's like, let's just stick together. Let's just go finish this thing. Who cares? Let's just finish it. And so he
Good.
stuck with me for that whole second half, and we just went to work and grinded it out. And he got to listen to me bitch and moan a little bit. But I think my my mood turned around for the most part. But even by like mile 22, I mean, my legs were just smoked. My hips were tight. Like, the fitness just wasn't there, which is frustrating me to see that I've regressed. Just mentally frustrating me. But I'm so
Did
glad I
you?
didn't drop.
So I was gonna say, did you get that win you were looking for? Like in hindsight, are you glad that you battled through? And did you get, even though you knew you said you got your butt kicked worse than you thought you were gonna, you,
Yeah,
was it still a good stepping stone moving forward?
yeah, yeah. I just needed to get a finish. And honestly, I think because I haven't battled through those kind of lows before in a race, even though I've done like on paper much harder races, longer races, more vertical gain, like to me on paper, I think that's part of what was messing with me too, is on paper that looked like an easier 50K. Um, but to push through those lows of really, really wanting to quit, like being 99% sure I was going to quit and not and keep moving forward, I think is a good experience for me going into what I have coming up over the next 12 months. I'm probably guaranteed to have those same moments along the way at races. And so,
Yep.
if nothing else, it was like some mental preparation for me to practice really pushing through when it gets hard, because haven't had it. I haven't had that much of a mental low ever. I don't think in a race.
My first 60K was four loops. What, 60K. And the third loop, I was, I think, in last place or second to last place. It was pouring rain, And literally that entire loop, that entire 9 mile loop or whatever it was, I knew I knew immediately. I'm like, I'm done. This is it for me. And I talked myself out of even the videos that I took of the race. I'm telling the camera, like, I'm done. Like, sorry guys, this is it. And we were there with a couple of friends that had to leave early. So my wife was sitting there waiting, and we were kind of new to the ultra scene, and the people we were there with had a little more experience. Well, I came back into the start finish shoot, and I'm shaking my head, and I'm getting ready to tell my wife, like, we're going home. We're going home. And she must have known the look in my face. She was like, Brad, don't say anything. Kerry said you're going to want to quit. And she said, there's no way I'm allowed to, and that you have to leave the aid station and that you're not allowed to talk. You have to drink this Coke and you just have to leave. And I was more emotionally broken by the fact that she didn't want me to quit because it was raining. It was crappy. I just pictured this. I painted this whole picture in my mind getting back there like, yeah, sweetheart, I went 50K and it's fine. It's raining. We got a long trip. Let's go see the kids. We don't and her being like, "Are you sure it's okay?" Nope.
Yep.
She did the exact opposite. And she was like, "I'm not taking no for an answer." I'm like, "Tara, it's pouring rain." She's like, "It's 85 degrees and pouring rain and I got an umbrella. So you're going back out.
Yep.
So you're either going to run it and I'll see you in 90 minutes, or you're going to walk it and I'll see you in 2 hours." And I was I walked out of that start finish like pouting, like,
Yeah.
oh, she's making me go back out again. I gotta find the video of it because that's exactly what I said. Like, Tara won't let me quit, and I actually ran my fastest loop, and I think I finished like third to last. I even
Yeah.
passed one guy in the last loop, and I'm so glad. We need those people every once in a while because we're just not thinking. Even in my 100, if I didn't have my buddy Ryan pacing me in my 100, I quit ultra marathons like 100 times during that 100. And
Yeah.
he was like, "This is what you signed up for." And I'm like, "No, it's not. I never want to feel this way ever again." And then
Yeah,
sure
you're
enough,
like,
next morning, I'm like, I'm in. We're right back into it. I'm doing another 50 miler next weekend. It really is a dig. So I'm glad that it was, even in the low moments, we could still like love this sport. And as a stepping stone of what's next, like what is next for you? What do you got going on?
so next thing on the calendar is my first 100-mile race, which is
Okay.
Saddles 100,
Okay.
which is up in Prescott,
Yep. October
October
3rd,
5th.
5th,
October
5th.
5th.
Yeah.
Yep, it's pretty much just one giant loop around the city of
Mm-hmm.
Prescott, which is like what I'm looking for. I can do a loop if it's just one loop.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the big focus for this whole summer. I want to I'll have to see if I can find some kind of tune up race, even if it's another 50K or a 50 mile or something that makes sense within the time frame. I'll have to talk to my coach and see what we can find because it's tough here in the summer to
Yeah.
find any longer races. I'd like to do another one before that one, but that's the
I'll tell
goal
you,
until
that's all. The episode I released today, I had Abby Storer on. I don't know if you know who she is, but she has a podcast. She's an ultra runner out of Utah. She actually just had a DNF at the Zion 100. And she, after DNFing from that, she signed up for Saddles. So she's going to be there as well.
oh sweet.
Um, and we were talking about the importance of like a big effort before. And I talked about how I did the Grand Canyon 4 weeks out from my 100. And my coach was like very against like racing per se because he knows that I'm full send and I'll beat myself up. And I'm not one of those people that it's a funny story. When I first signed up, there's a local 50K here. My first 50K ever. My brother was going to do it, and I was like, "Coach, can I sign up for this 50K?" And he's like, "Nah, man, that's 3 weeks out from your race. No." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, now fast forward 5 months later, he programmed 30 miles for that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you son of a bitch. I'm like, I want to go do this race. And he goes, a few things. Number one, I didn't think you'd do as well. So I'll give you a little bit of credit. You're fitter than I thought you were going to be 5 months ago. He's like, but also, you don't know how to go out to a race and use it as a training day. You only
Mm-hmm.
know full send. So I
Yep.
was like, oh, all right, if you say so. And he was probably right. But the 50-mile effort that I did in the Grand Canyon, for a number of different reasons, I carried that experience into canyons, and it was mine. I cannot say it enough. I think if I was going to coach a 100-mile athlete, 4 to 5, 6 weeks out, maybe tops, I'm definitely going to try and get them into a 50-miler, or at least a 50-mile fastback, something that's in in that 12 to 15 hour range, just because, like, yeah, there's just things go weird, things happen. And I think there's really something to be said for maybe starting in the dark, going into the day, and then heading into the dark again, or making it through a night. So I'm not, like you said, you mentioned you have a coach, and I'm sure they'll say the same thing. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea to look for, a nice big tune up like that 5 to 6 weeks out. I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
took so much out of it.
Right. And then probably just a confidence builder and stuff too. And like you said,
Yeah,
it may not even be like an official race. It may be something like you mentioned with the Grand Canyon. It might be some
yeah.
bigger self-supported effort, but there will be something. But it's funny because you were talking about doing that 50K, or wanting to do that 50K leading up to your race. And like I did Man Against Horse 50 miler in October of last year. And about whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks out from that race, I had a 30-mile run on the schedule. And I just happened to be looking at the races. I go, hey, there's a 50K like the same day. It was like the same weekend or the weekend before. You want me to do this 30 mile? Can I just do it at a race? Because I want, like, I'd rather have the aid stations and stuff like that instead of me trying to go out and run 30 miles on my own. And she let me do it, but she probably told me 20 times leading up to it, like, this is not a race. Like, you I do not want you to be wrecked after this. Like, this is a long training run. Like, take it easy. So she definitely drilled that home.
It's not me. That's I
Yeah.
just can't. And it's not even the competitiveness or like me wanting to beat people. It's more like I'm so proud of the change that I've made in my life through sobriety. I've lost almost 100 pounds. And like, I'm more just, I get to a race and I'm just super excited to use fitness. Like, I'm really
Yeah.
excited. I more want to just see how fast I can go. And like, now that there's hundreds behind me, I'm doing a 5K this weekend with my wife. And
Kick it.
I'm thinking to myself, I haven't been in like a local 5K, and I'm not saying I have like 5K competitive speed. Maybe for a 40-year-old, 42, I'm 42, but maybe for a 42-year-old I do. But man, she's all like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go to this 5K, calm down. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I want blood.
Oh yeah,
I want blood out there.
man.
And I'm
It,
so, and it's really just because I'm excited to use fitness. I'm just so fired up about it.
running a 5K fast is gnarly too. Like I
Yeah.
have a buddy that I run with all the time, and he does these ultra distances. But when he wants to be, he's really fast at the shorter distances. Like he went out a few months ago and did a local 5K here and won it, doing like 6 minute miles. But he was, I mean, not wrecked, but he was like, I'm feeling that. Like, I felt worse after running a fast 5K than I have running a 15, 20 miler out here where I'm kind of on cruise control.
Absolutely. And I don't know how these guys, like, I don't know if you know Jeremy Miller is. He just busted out like 3 sub 3 hour marathons in back to back weekends. Like that.
Sheesh.
I mean, I just tried to PR my mile, and I was so sore the next day. I was like, oh, just even a mile.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like I'm going back to my zone two, my low intensity stuff.
I
But
know. Running short and fast scares the crap out of me. I'd much rather it go slow and long.
and you're not, and with saddles, there's a bunch of people. I know even Glaze does that race, and it's like, I know Javelina is going to be an awesome party, but now I know more people doing saddles, and I'm like, and now hearing you do, I'm like, I kind of want to do saddles.
Yeah.
I
It was
kind of want
the
to do.
it was the inaugural year last year,
Yeah.
and the guy that runs it, the put it together, he's like a local runner here, Mike Versteeg, and he's, he won Cocodona the first year that they did it, and he's kind of like a little local legend here. And so it seemed like it was a really cool race last year, so I think they got a lot more attention this
Yeah.
year going into it. In fact, of my core group of guys, there's like five of us that all run together all the time. Four of us are entered for the 100 mile distance, so
Do I got to
it's going to be a
change
lot of
my?
fun.
Do I got to change my race? Oh my god! How much hotter is it that we? I mean, I don't think 2 weeks is really going to make a difference that much.
And it's cooler up in Prescott too. They're at a higher
Yeah.
elevation. They're at like maybe 5 to 6,000 feet.
What's
So
the vert on that course? Like,
it's like
what's the up and
it's
down? Do you
like
know?
it's like just shy of 13,000
Oh no,
feet.
it's manageable.
I think so it's one big loop. This year they're reversing the course. So
Okay.
he hasn't put up like the new official course details because he didn't even put up the course details for it last year until like a month before. That's just kind of him. But I'm assuming it's not going to change
That
the gain
much.
and loss a whole lot.
Oh man, I gotta look. I might change, man. I know, like I said, I know like so many people doing that race now.
They're both
Uh,
probably. I mean, you talk about two totally different experiences. Like I think Saddles is more like old school. There's toilet paper for the finish line. Like for
yeah. Oh,
Javelina, as you've seen videos of Javelina, it's like a rave Mad Max Halloween party out in the desert. So it's two
I
totally
know, but
different vibes.
I'm all about the people. And now, as I said, I think you're like maybe the fifth person that the only real person I know that's doing Cocodona is Glaze. And I bet you Glaze is doing saddles too. I'll get him at both of them. He does every race.
Well, too, because I'm doing Cocodona also.
You're doing Cocodona?
Yeah, into next year. I won a free entry.
Tell me more.
So yeah, so my plan was to do 100 mile this year, probably do a couple more next year, and then in 2026 go for 250 at Cocodona.
Are you spilling
There
the tea
was
everywhere? Have you told people this yet?
no, I haven't. I've kept it like mostly to myself because it's just so far away, and I want to focus on
Groundbreaking
saddles.
episode on the podcast tonight.
I think I put it in my stories like when I first won because it was an Instagram giveaway. It was a Cocodona and Tannery, which is a sunscreen company. They did like a
Yeah.
collab, and it was like one of those giveaways where it's literally like tag your friends in the comments. We'll select a winner on Friday, and it was for a free entry into Cocodona, and so you got to pick the distance. So you got to pick like, do you want to do the 250, the 125, or the 38? And my mind was immediately like, well, I'm gonna get a free entry. I'm just gonna go for it.
You
But
better
I
be
did
going
text my
for it.
I did text my coach before I committed and said, "Is this completely stupid?" And she was like, "No, that's
Yes.
totally doable. Do it."
It's
So
stupid, but it's doable.
yeah. Well, a lot of people have told me that like you don't even necessarily need to do 100 before you do a 250 because it's totally different thing. It's a totally different animal. Trying to run 100
Yeah.
miles in 30 hours versus you have 5 days to probably hike most of 250 miles. So I'm going to do it a year sooner than I planned on, but like I just figured what do I got to
Oh,
lose?
man, I'm so happy for you. That is
Yeah.
full send.
Yeah.
I
I'm
I'm and I
stoked.
have to live vicariously through all of you guys. I mean, being a school teacher, I it's borderline impossible. I
Yeah.
mean, for just for the time. Well, I mean, I guess if I, to be honest, if I walked into my boss and I was like, "Hey, I have 5 personal days every year," I was like, if I needed them and it meant that much to me, my boss is the type of guy. I have 15 years in the building. He'd approve it, but it also happens right on I teach AP, so my advanced placement exams are that week, and I love my kids so much, and it sounds cliche, and maybe not every teacher feels this way, but like I couldn't do it to them. I
Yeah.
got to be there because I teach in a really competitive district too, so they're really hard on themselves. I couldn't imagine walking away from them, and I was actually hoping when Candace announced the Arizona 300 was going to be early April. That's my spring break kind of moves, and my spring break was mid-April, and I'm like, oh man, I was just begging and praying that it would end up being that week, and it wasn't. So it pushed that ahead. And then my other options for 200s are the Tahoe 200. But I got to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, I'm not really about the out and back. It doesn't really do it
Mm-hmm.
for me. And then Bigfoot is in August when I'm off. And that's just like, I talked to a couple of people that's like, that's just so remote that I'm not ready for that. Like, I think watching Cocodona, I I want that distance, and I just don't know how I want it yet, because I really feel like I want to push the 100-mile distance. Like I want to feel like I'm racing a 100 before I
Hmm.
go back to like surviving the 200. And my coach
Hmm.
is, he's like, you wouldn't survive. Like we would train and you would race it. You would go for it. But oh man, I'm so happy for you. I'm so jealous and I'm so happy, and I'm glad that that's just another because you watch that race. The it's great being a spectator for that race too, and
Oh
just
yeah.
trying to explain to your friends like, remember that race I was telling you about on Monday? Yeah, it's still going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Oh
mean,
man,
I'm so excited because I sit there and watch the have the live stream on all week, and it's this 250 that's like in my backyard, and so yeah, I'm so pumped. It's always been a goal. It was probably a 2-year goal, but it's moved up. But seems like maybe it was meant to be.
I think it's a 10-year. I mean, if I get to 50, if I get to 50 years old and I'm still racing, that I'll say to my boss like, hey man, I need to do this on my 50th birthday or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
heck yeah.
maybe I'll become a big shot influencer and I could stop
There you
teaching high
go.
school physics.
That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to make this my
like and
passion slash income.
like and follow. All right, man. I thanks so much for the conversation. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do respect your time and everything. I'm sure you got things to do this evening. I see the sun's still up for you in the background. It looks like so.
Yep, yep.
Um,
I got
I'm gonna
another
let you
hour or
go,
so.
and like I said, I thank you for filling us in on what's been going on, and sharing that vulnerability with us. And I am fired up that you're doing saddles, and I might need to change my race from javelina to that. And then Cocodona, wow, man, that's it seems like a dream year, and it's gonna go fast.
Yeah,
and you have a 5 month old.
I know. I know. I could see the look of concern on my wife's face when I told her, but
I was gonna say
she's
you called your
supportive.
coach. You called your coach. Did you call your wife?
First, wife second, I think.
Oh
But
man,
no, she's on board. But I could definitely
good
see the
man.
look of.
And I'll make sure that I post everywhere to find you. And I'm sure there's very few people that follow me that don't know who you are. So if anything, maybe you'll give me the bump. But
Yeah, heck yeah, I'm all about that.
I look forward to it, man. I'm going to bump into you eventually, and we'll get on the same course. And worst case scenario, I'll see you over at Javelina. And when I
Yep.
see you at Javelina, you better be wearing the belt buckle. Don't be one of those guys that just puts it on the shelf. When you wearing that buckle, you freaking wear that buckle, and you wear that thing. I wear mine, and it says UTMB on it. And I'm not taking that thing off. So I'm wearing
Oh
it
man, I
everywhere I
have
go.
one.
Yeah,
I got a belt buckle for the 50 mile and I haven't worn it once. It's just sitting on my
man.
shelf. I've been shamed by my buddies.
Well, maybe when it's the 100 one, you'll wear that.
Yeah, definitely.
50 is pretty dope too, though.
It is dope.
All right, man. I'll catch you next time. Thanks again so much
All
for
right.
your time.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Bye.
Brad.